has been a positive week for the equities markets here in Nigeria as the bulls dominated trading activities all week. Next week, the Nigerian Stock Exchange will hold its annual 2020 market recap and provide an outlook for the year. And I have joining me for a review of this week's trading activity is Gbolahan Ologunro. He's a research analyst at Cordros Securities. Thank you so much for your time today, Gbolahan. We've seen quite a rally this week, and I'd like you to speak to what we can expect. The market is up about 1.8% year to date so far.
Yeah, good afternoon, Kenneth. Thank you for having me. Like you said, the market has been broadly positive since the start of the week. Although it was a slow start to the week, when you look at the cumulative gains in the first 3 trading days of the week, when market was up by just below 0.6%. But on Thursday, we saw markets posting a stronger gain of about 1.5% that pushed the week-to-date returns at around 2%. That's as at yesterday. And like you said, today, market is up by over 1.8% as at the close of trading today.
All right, now looking at how the market is building from that positive run from the last quarter of last year. Now we're seeing the NSE All-Share Index cross that 41,000 mark today. I'd like to get your take on what we're seeing there and how much you think this rally can sustain.
Yeah, certainly. I think a number of factors have continued to support market performance. Firstly, you want to look at the low yield environment in the fixed income space at a time where we have also seen inflation gravitating towards 2016 levels, with inflation printing around 15.75% as at the end of November. And when you consider the average yield for the bonds in the bond space currently at around 6%, so in the fixed income market, real returns are negative. So that has remained a major factor that has continued to encourage investors to buy into stocks. More so that investors are also expecting these companies to declare dividends for full year 2020 performance, and that should be coming up. That should be declared sometimes in the first quarter of this year.
All right, now, but when you look at how some other sectors have been performing so far, one that stands out for me here so far is the insurance stocks, and we're seeing that rally continue there. From your view, though, what's playing out there for investors?
Yeah, so for the insurance sector, I think since the start of the year, we've seen continued rally in the share prices of most of the stocks in that space. So you can't rule out some speculative buying activities in the insurance sector when you consider the fact that NICOM has also directed recapitalization for the insurance industry. And for that sector, it is expected that industry players, depending on where you're operating, whether you are operating a life insurance business, general insurance business, or you're operating a composite insurance business, you're expected to meet certain capitalization requirements. So in that regard, some players have moved swiftly in trying to meet up with the guideline from NICOM, the likes of Mansard and NEM Insurance. So investors are more or less taking position in those companies, given the fact that we might see further consolidation in that industry as the bigger players who have been able to meet up with capital requirements are likely to absorb the smaller companies. And of course, if you are going to acquire those smaller companies, you would have to pay for those companies, in which case they might attract some premium. So in that regard, investors are also trying to cherry pick some names that they feel have the ability to be able to withstand the recapitalization exercise at the end of the day.
Oh, now let's look at some of the quality stocks that did well today. We're seeing Flour Mills, Presco, MTN, Nigerian Breweries, and UACN, topping the charts here. Let's look at Flour Mills and look at that space. For you, though, what's played out with investors? The stock is up about 2.80 naira today.
Yeah, so for Flour Mills, our investors are expecting the 9 months 2020 financials, which will be released in the next 15 to 20 trading days. For Flour Mills, again, the performance has been supported by a combination of factors. One, I think the closure of the land borders has enabled the company to push more of its volumes into the domestic market. In addition to that, we've also seen increased demand for pasta products, more so that rice, which is the widely consumed consumer staple, is fast going out of the purchasing power of the average consumer in Nigeria. So for Flour Mill, it is in a very good position now in terms of its ability to push more volumes across its major businesses. You look at the agro-allied space, you look at the sugar business, you also look at the food products. So in terms of reduced competition from importation of small good products into the domestic economy, that has been supported by the closure of the land borders, and this has enabled the company to be able to push more with volumes into the domestic market. So we expect positive performance for flour mills ahead of its 9-month 2020 financials. However, I think the major drawback for flour mills still remains the fact that it has continued to record significant FX losses on the back of the devaluation we've seen in the local currency. So as at 6 months 2020 for flour mills, we saw FX loss printing at around 12 billion. Nonetheless, we still saw robust expansion in bottom line, and I think that trend is likely to continue even ahead of its 9 months 20 financials.
All right, and next week the exchange will be doing a recap of last year's activities and also sharing their outlook for the year 2021. What would you expect from that engagement?
Yeah, so firstly, I think the Nigerian Stock Exchange would first and foremost seize the opportunity to reiterate its commitments towards ensuring a smooth remote trading, and that was activated last year in March when we had the pandemic here in Nigeria. So I think one of the major highlights at that meeting is first and foremost reiterating their commitment towards sustaining remote trading, because as it stands now, it appears Nigeria is also experiencing the second wave of the pandemic, which implies that you are likely to continue with remote trading. Aside that, I think 2020 was a stellar performance for the equities market, with the market posting return of around 50%, making it the best performing stock exchange across the globe. But looking ahead into 2021, I think if we can take a cue from the factors that drove the bullish performance we saw in the market last year, investors will be looking out for clues on how those factors would evolve in 2021. Firstly, on monetary policy, are we likely to see the central bank changing its stance on monetary policy to a more hawkish stance, which would require tightening of monetary policy by hiking interest rates to attract foreign portfolio investors, get that much needed dollar inflows that would be used in stabilizing the external sector and restoring some form of stability in the exchange rate. Aside that as well, I think expectations would also be around the macroeconomic development. So how would Nigeria be able to weather the storm with the second wave of the pandemic, when you consider the fact that we can't afford to actually go into a second phase of lockdown, given the attendant impact on economic activities, the impact on household income, the impact to even on government finances. So it's a critical situation for Nigeria, and investors will be looking out for the dynamics of the interrelationship between all of these factors and how it would influence market performance across different sectors in 2021, such that they are now able to determine those sectors or companies that are likely to outperform the performance we saw in 2020.